Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for another episode of Fuck, Marry,
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fuck, Marry, Kill podcast. I'm your host, Britt.
And I'm Devika.
Devika, this is your episode. I'm going to let you give a tiny little explanation of the game and then take off, girl. Take off.
Yeah, that sounds good. So if you're just tuning in with us, FMK is a podcast where we take a theme and we present three options, and then we decide at the end which one we would fuck, marry, or kill, all conceptually.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
We're not actually doing these things.
No, nor we want to. So with that, we always kind of start off with a little bit of wine too. So cheers.
Cheers. I didn't do wine today, though. I cheated.
Oh, okay. What are you doing?
I did a cocktail, but it's an espresso martini.
Ooh, there you go. That'll wake you up.
Yeah, I tried something new. So I went to the liquor store and I found they're like pre-made espresso martinis. And I was like, this is either going to go really well or really it's going to taste like crap. And I looked at it, and one of the co-founders of this brand, which is the After Hours, I think, is Neil Patrick Harris. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Neil Patrick Harris.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good for one that you just pour over ice and you don't have to do anything. I don't like that it's missing the little bit of foam, though, because I'm a fancy girl. I'm so fancy.
Yeah, no, I feel ya. I might get that for Alex, though. He loves espresso martinis.
It's delicious. Do you recommend?
Sweet.
What's your wine?
It's my usual. It's my Montevideo Alentejo White. And I get it from the supermarket. It's like €6. It's amazing. It's good stuff.
We love a bargain.
Oh yeah, always. So are you ready for episode 10?
I don't know if I'm ever ready for any of these episodes. They're brutal.
Well, the last one of my episodes was a little bit lighter, still kind of gross and stuff, right? But this one gets back to being heavy. So I will warn it on that.
All right. Good thing I have a cocktail this time.
Exactly. You can just get a little bit tipsy.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've noticed online, but a subject that's been trending is this whole man versus bear thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to explain it in case anybody hasn't heard of it?
Yeah, good call. So basically, these videos started trending where people were interviewed on the street. If you were alone in the woods, interviewing women specifically, but it extended to men as well at some point. If you were alone in the woods, would you rather run into a bear or a man? And overwhelmingly, the response was a bear. And for a lot of really, really good and valid reasons.
Yeah.
And so this episode is men that you would not want to meet in the woods.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
Crap.
So this is really proving, and I don't know if you also saw a lot of the response videos from, most guys were really supportive of this and understood. And there were that vocal handful that were just very offended that women were picking
Those are the exact
bear.
ones you don't want to meet in the woods.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe there are also people who just don't believe that women live in this fear, constantly when we go to our cars, when we walk around at night, we're constantly vigilant.
Holding our keys.
And it's no, yeah, exactly. And bears they're creatures that exist in nature and they're wild animals. So they act in a certain way that we understand. Yeah. Humans are and humans are not predictable. They're erratic and scary. And so I think, and what was really alarming about this, Britt, when I was doing research, is that these were three of so many stories. There's actually a whole podcast called Lost in the Woods, and they don't just do murders, but they do a lot of different murders and kidnappings and stuff like that happen in the woods. They do other things that happen in the woods too, but I mean, they have a whole podcast on it. So it's
jeez,
it's a problem. Yeah. And the bear killings are so small,
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So,
but are these
this
men
is the episode.
Oh, sorry. Are these men that have done bad things in the actual woods, or is this sort of hypothetically you wouldn't want to run into them in the woods?
Oh, no. These are men that have literally, women have run into them in the woods, and it was not a good situation.
All right.
Yeah.
Oof. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So this is quite literal. Yeah.
Ugh.
All right. So the first one that we're going to be doing, option 1, is the abduction of Kari Swenson by the so-called mountain men.
Just the phrase mountain men in this context. Oof.
Not good.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Kari Swenson is 22 years old. And in 1984, she goes running on a mountain trail in Yellowstone National Park. And she doesn't show up for work that evening because she has been abducted by 2 men who are known as the quote unquote mountain men. So Kari is very outdoorsy. Her parents and her 2 siblings moved to Montana when she was 8. Her mother, Janet, was a nurse and also a volunteer for the search and rescue parties in the area, which is kind of cruelly ironic because she was on her daughter's search and rescue.
Yeah.
And something really remarkable about Kari, she was also a huge athlete. She was a top competitor in biathlon, which is not very big in America, but it's huge in like Northern Europe. So it's cross-country skiing and target shooting.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not popular here at all.
No. And it's like, it sprouts from like old military exercises, like Nordic military exercises. Yeah. So she won a medal for the World Biathlon in France, and she was one of the few women and very few Americans to partake and excel in the sport. And shortly after graduating from Montana State University, she took a job at a lodge, and 6 days a week when she wasn't working, she was training for next season's biathlon. So I think it's important just because it's like, this is like an athlete,
yeah,
right?
She's cool as hell. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kari loved horses, and at the stables near the lodge, she met a man named Alan Goldstein who tended to the horses. And I'm just mentioning him because he's important later in the story.
Okay.
Kind of moving away from her story just really quickly. That same summer in July of 1984, and we actually know the date, July 14th, a woman was fishing in I'm going to butcher this.
That's okay. I do it all the time.
Right? I feel like I should know this. It's in America, but Ulrys?
Sure.
Ulrys?
Ulrys.
Sure. Ulrys Lake in Yellowstone.
Okay.
So she was fishing, and her husband and her children were nearby, but she was kind of off on her own. So 2 men who looked really dirty and disheveled, they called out to her from the other side of the lake and asked her for the date. She told them the date, and then they asked her to come closer, claiming that there was more fish by them.
Never go.
Yeah. No.
Don't
so she was creeped out. She was creeped out, and she heard her husband calling to her, and she realized how far away from him that she was. So she paddled away, let you know what's coming.
Who the fuck would fall for that? Hey, what's the date? You want to come see some more fish?
There's more fish on this side of the lake.
Yeah, how do you know?
No thanks.
It's a fucking dark lake.
So now back to Kari. So one morning that summer, after finishing her breakfast shift, Kari gets ready to go out for a run. And she was warned to be extra cautious that day because, wait for it, there was a grizzly bear sprouted on the trail the day before.
It was 2 on the head.
So after work, she put on her running shorts and a t-shirt, and she put her hair in a ponytail. And after reviewing different paths, she decided to take the running path by Ulrys Lake.
Okay.
So she was working a split shift that day, so she had to be back well before 6 p.m. So she usually took a fanny pack with her with a first aid kit and long underwear and a t-shirt. But she didn't take that with her on that day.
It's like the perfect storm of
because she was just going to go for a quick run and then come back. So she parks her car in the lot by the start of the trail, and she starts on her jog. At one point, she actually sees 2 men fishing by the lake in the distance. Mm-hmm. And she takes the fork in the path to run the opposite direction of them because she wants to avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
And
smart.
This is like not a new thing for women, right? Like if you're alone and there's a couple of guys, it doesn't matter if they're shady or not. We're going to go the other way.
Yeah.
So
I'm just antisocial, so I get away from everybody in general. Like, no, I do not want to talk to you. Bye-bye.
I feel ya. Yeah. So unfortunately for her, they did see her. And so the two men by the lake who saw her were Dan and Don Nichols.
Those fuckheads. That's not even.
It was,
cool
they were,
names.
I know. And they're actually kind of a pain in the butt to keep
Dingus
track of.
Dongus.
But yeah. Well, Don was the father, Dan was the son, and they were both like real pieces of shit for sure.
Yeah.
So apparently by their own account, Dan, after he saw Kari, was said to have told his father that he saw, quote unquote, hell of a pretty girl coming around the lake and to get ready.
I'm sure they did talk like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Painful. Okay.
But like, ew, gross too,
So
you know,
smooth.
like get ready. So they intercept her path and she sees these two really dirty, disheveled men who are staring at her, unsmiling. And one of them has a gun that she can see. They actually both have guns. But so she tries to jog past them, but they block her and they stand in front of her. And the older man grabs her wrist.
Oh, God, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Ooh, I just got chills.
Yeah, it's awful. So she tells them to let her go. And he said, no, we don't run into pretty girls up here very often. We'd like to talk to you.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay. Ugh.
They asked her name. They asked if she was married. And she on the fly made up a name, lied and said, yes, she was married. They asked her husband's name. She threw out Bill. Then they asked her why she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. And she said she works in a kitchen and she doesn't want to get caught in anything. She's just trying to think quick, right?
Yeah, smart. Yeah. That's great.
But they didn't believe her. And one of them said something like, all women lie.
Ugh.
And at this point, she starts getting more scared and she starts yelling at them to let her go. Then the older one, the father, says they've been looking for companionship. And he asks his son, should we keep her? And the son says yes. So the older man then asks his son to bring a rope. And at this point, Kari freaked out and she starts fighting. And the old guy hits her in the face. And then he put her in a chokehold and tied her up. Okay. So they have guns and she's still like just fighting for her life. Like she's badass, right?
Yeah.
At this point, she tries pleading with the younger guy because maybe he seemed less violent, less crazy, but he just said to her, I want to keep you.
Ew. Like she's an animal or something. Fuck off.
So she was tethered to Dan, and that's the son. And Don, the father, was following behind them with a gun. At one point, she dropped her wristband. She dropped her headband as well to try to leave breadcrumbs.
Smart.
But they were both noticed. Yeah, but they were both noticed and the items were retrieved. But she also tried making deep footprints, and she was able to do that.
Man, this girl did not let fear stop her from thinking, very intelligently. Wow. Okay.
I mean, seriously, like I don't know what I would have done in that situation.
Same.
And she's 22 years old, like she's just out of college. So, So the group stopped for camp around 5 p.m. and they chained her to a tree. At this point, she was getting bitten up by mosquitoes because remember, she didn't bring her fanny pack or anything. I mean, not that who knows if they would let her change or anything like that or put on stuff. But she asked them if they had any clothes because it was getting so bad. And to this, the old man said that he had kept some of his ex-wife's clothes on the other side of the mountain. He also said, wait until you see some of the underground caves we live in. We have hideouts there where we won't ever... He actually said, where we won't never be found.
Oh, no.
How terrifying for her.
Ugh, they're little like underground fucking creatures in there.
Yeah.
Also, what is his ex-wife like? Holy shit.
Who knows? There was no information on it. Yeah.
No, I'm just curious.
But who knows? I mean, maybe he sounds really abusive. So, I mean, you never know. At 6 p.m., when Kari doesn't show up for work, everyone gets immediately worried because this isn't like her. I mean, she's a disciplined athlete. Her brother grabs a radio and drives to the lake and sees her car and alerts her family. Everyone's worried that she's been hurt or injured. So that's the main concern. People think that she, like there was a bear on the loose, ironically, right? And maybe she twisted her ankle. So her mother and local search and rescuers start looking for her. They even send out a plane, which her father gets on to get like an aerial view.
Yeah.
At one point, her mother comes across a man walking his dogs. He hasn't seen Kari, but he saw a couple men fishing. And these guys must have stood out because people really noticed them. And I think it's because they were just so like hobo looking, you know,
Yeah,
even
hideous.
though they weren't, they were choosing to be out there. Yeah. This is the first time that Kari's mother is hit with the idea that maybe another human may have done Kari harm.
Poor mom.
So Kari's mother also finds Kari's fanny pack in her apartment with the first aid and the long clothing. So she's extra worried knowing that it's getting cold and that Kari has nothing to help her if she's hurt. Meanwhile, at camp that they had set up, Kari's literally hearing people call her name in the plane overhead.
Oh, no.
And the search is continuing all night, but they're not finding her.
Mm-hmm.
By morning, she was freezing. She's sore. She was covered in bug bites.
Mm-hmm.
And she hears a rustling and she sees a man that's nearby. So Don, the older captor, grabs his rifle and points it at the man. And he goes, "This the girl you've been looking for?" And the man says, "Yes." Kari starts running, yelling at the man to run and get more help, saying that her captors are armed.
Mm-hmm.
And the old guy tells his son to shut her up. So the son goes over and shoots Kari in the chest.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Then he starts yelling, "I didn't mean to shoot her," and asks the rescuer, so this guy in the bushes, his name was Jim, to come and help him. At the same time, the dad is yelling at Jim to stay put, but Jim ends up running over to Kari's aid.
Mm-hmm.
But then a second rescuer emerges, and Don turns and points the gun at him. Now, this second rescuer is that guy, Alan Goldstein, from the stables.
Yes.
So he puts his hand up, and Don, the father, turns away from him. But then Alan reaches, and we're not sure if he reached for either his radio or his gun, because he did have a gun, but the radio was farmed next to him. But it doesn't matter because Don sees that out of the corner of his eye, turns and shoots him in the head.
No, in the head?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, poor guy. Poor both of them.
I know.
Jeez.
He then turns back to Jim, but as soon as he had pulled the trigger, Jim books it. He runs into the woods. And Kari recalls hearing a noise after she got shot that sounded like someone sucking on a peach. And it turned out that that was coming from her chest.
No.
Because her lung had been punctured.
What?
Yeah.
Sounds like a peach? Oh my God.
Like, because her lung was punctured.
That description alone is, oof.
It gave me chills.
Yeah.
Like my stomach turned when I heard it.
Oh God.
When I read it. The two men start panicking and they pack up and they just leave her there for dead. She was kind of in a sleeping bag and they just kind of pull out the sleeping bag, pack it up and leave.
They took her sleeping bag?
It wasn't hers, but I guess, I mean,
Still,
I don't know why we're talking about ownership. But yeah, it's still weird.
Worried about that? Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, technically, no, but yeah, terrible.
It wasn't hers. What the fuck? Okay, they left her for dead.
So she tries calling out to Al, but he doesn't respond. She's laying there, and instead of freaking out, I mean, this woman, she starts slowing her breath and keeping calm so that she can slow down her heart rate.
Whoa.
It would take 4 hours before rescuers find her, and Kari remembers ants and other bugs were on her wound.
Ooh. Ah.
And then to make matters worse, it was an air rescue, and her gurney on the way up hits a tree, and she nearly falls off the gurney.
Oh
but
my God.
She doesn't.
How much would that hurt? Jeez.
Terrible. So when she gets to the hospital, doctors actually say that if she hadn't slowed her breathing and dropped her heart rate, she would have most likely died because of the hemorrhaging.
It slowed her from bleeding out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Exactly.
I don't think I would have ever thought of that. If I were just like shot, I'd be like, I'm done. I'll see you later.
Even if I had thought of that, I don't think that I have like the ability to be calm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Thinking.
Even if I think about it, I don't know if I would be able to physically, but so she gave the police a full description of the two men, and they actually already had illustrations drawn up for the descriptions because the girl from the lake who had gone fishing, she had gone to the police the day before as soon as she found out that somebody was missing because she got, your spidey senses are going. You just know when somebody's really creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And when she told them where she had seen them, like when she told the cops where she had seen these two guys, they checked the area and these geniuses carved their names into like wood.
Well, which, like Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
But like, yeah.
Dumbasses. I mean, it's good, yeah.
Yeah, and even Kari actually thought that they were kind of dumb because when they stopped at 5 p.m., it was still sunlight. And she was like, these guys are stopping before it even gets dark. Like even when she wrote about it later, she was like, struck me as odd, but
they also didn't even know what the fuck the date was.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you, Marty McFly?
Seriously. So even with all this information, though, the Nichols were captured in December after they had built this fire and people were still looking for them. So Don and Dan were captured kind of like by a fire, not too deep into the woods. And even though they had said things to Kari, like nobody's going to take us alive when they were leaving, they came without a fight.
Cowards.
Yeah. And people think it also is just because they were tired and it was cold, because as much as they like to make themselves out to be mountain men, they would actually come back to civilization for several months of the year and they would steal things from other cabins. They had modern things. So it wasn't like they were just living off the land.
Yeah, real pieces of shit.
Seriously, in every way.
Yeah.
During the trial, Don, the father, said that he was hoping to start a tribe in the woods. And he had bought a chain for the woman he was going to capture 5 years prior to Kari. So they were like planning for it.
Jesus. How do you get that bad though? Like you must have had some really serious mommy issues or something.
Seriously, but it gets worse because you think that everyone would have the reaction that we have, but the news coverage at the time was just completely disgusting. Some reporters said that it was almost romantic.
What
they were doing. Yep. Some people were, and quote unquote, delighted with the ease at which the fugitives eluded capture. Another quote, some rowdy mountain men trying to snag a wife. Another one. Yeah. Oh, there's a couple more that I'll just mention because it just makes me angry. Old Don and Dan as a harmless throwback to an earlier, less tamed era in the West. Nice men born 100 years too late.
What?
Yeah. I mean, the sentiment is just astounding. And this, by the way, this is the 80s. This isn't like 1905. Like this is the 80s.
That's some like Princess Leia, Jabba the Hutt type shit. Like what?
Okay. Interesting reference.
Yeah, well.
But yeah.
It's the 80s.
Sure. It is the 80s.
70s and 80s.
So Don Nichols is convicted of homicide and assault, and he's sentenced to 85 years.
Not life?
Dan, 85 years, and he was already kind of older. So, but just wait. So Dan was sentenced to kidnapping and assault, and he was sentenced to 20 and a half years.
What? Didn't they kill the Allen guy?
Don did. Yeah. So he was convicted of homicide, but Dan was sentenced to kidnapping and assault. He wasn't convicted of attempted murder because he said it was an accident that he shot her. But
and they bought that,
I guess. Dan was released early in 2012, so the son, but he was rearrested for drugs. And Don just got out on parole after serving 31 years.
No! Are you fucking kidding me right now?
No.
Sorry, I just yelled in the mic right in your ears.
No,
but
okay. No.
My God, that's so upsetting. Because they're the types that'll do it again.
Yeah, I mean, so I think Dan's back in prison for the drug stuff. But I think Don's probably too old. But it still just seems unfair. But yeah.
Wow.
So Kari wrote an article that basically called out everyone who was glamorizing these guys. She stated that they weren't mountain men. They stole from cabins. They would come back to civilization for months at a time. And the only reason they got caught is because they were cold and tired. They weren't actually living off the wild. They weren't mountain men. And remember, she's like this badass outdoors woman. So she's right. So Kari, she has shrapnel in her lungs still.
Whoa.
And she still, though, went on to the 1986 biathlon. She got 4th place by a fraction of a second. Yeah. And during the award ceremony, the 3rd place winner pulled her onto the platform and the whole crowd rose to their feet in support.
Oh, that almost made me cry. I love that.
I know. I actually almost
my throat was like, oh, you're going to cry.
It's like all these people and like the women who are just supporting each, and like all the people in the crowd were supporting her. And it was just like, yeah. Cool. Her and her mother also wrote a book together, which is now on my reading list for sure. It's called Victims, the Kari Swenson Story.
Okay.
And that is option 1.
Ah, what a great story. Not. The ending was
rough.
Good, but yeah.
All right. So option 2, this is the Trailside Killer. So this is the story of David Joseph Carpenter, the Trailside Killer. Ooh, the Trailside Killer.
The wine getting to you?
I think so. So, all right. So David Joseph Carpenter was born in 1930 in San Francisco. Both his parents were abusive, and he had a bad stutter that led him to be teased a lot in school, and he didn't have any friends. His mother also used to speak ill of women often, which is kind of like the psycho
nurture
guy.
Part? Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a trend. He was a bedwetter late into his teens, and he would often engage in animal abuse as a child.
Holy shit. Like, he checks all the serial killer boxes.
Yeah.
Wetting the bed, killing animals, stutter.
Seriously, apart from arson, he's doing it all.
Well, all right.
When he was 17, he also proved to be a sex offender after he was arrested for molesting 2 of his younger cousins, one of them as young as 3 years old.
No. Oh, God.
So he was arrested for that. Guess how long he spent in jail?
Not long enough.
He was released at 18.
Are you fucking kidding me right now?
I am not. Yeah.
Who in their right mind let him go? A 3-year-old. I mean, anybody, but like, okay, that poor kid.
So he got a job on a cruise ship, and he sort of laid low for a while. But in 1955 on the cruise ship, another worker said she was very uncomfortable with how he was towards her 14-year-old daughter. But it was 1955, so nothing was done about it. He got married and had 2 kids.
Why though?
Yeah. And then in 1960, Louis Diendrich, someone he knew from work, was walking down the street, and David pulled up and offered her a ride. He drives around for a bit. Then he says he's lost, and he pulls into a small empty road.
Nope.
And at this point, she knows something is wrong. So as soon as the car stops, she jumps out and runs. He chases her, apprehends her, pulls her back to the car, and tries to tie her up. Then he reaches for a hammer. That's when she starts struggling real hard, and he forgoes the hammer, brings out a knife, and he starts kind of brandishing it towards her, and she grabs the blade.
Ouch.
Which, ouch, hurts her, slices up the tendons of her hand.
Yeah.
But she escapes. And then he runs after her with the hammer, and she's screaming the whole time. She doesn't stop screaming, and he starts hitting her over the head with the hammer. But she keeps screaming, and it just so happens that a military policeman is driving by. He stops his car, runs over, and David hits him with the hammer too.
What the fuck?
This guy is out of it.
Did he incapacitate him?
No.
Oh, thank God.
And the cop has a gun. So he apprehends David, brings him to the cop car. But David has one of those, this is bizarre to me. He has one of those spy gun pens. It looks like a fountain pen, but it's a gun.
What?
That's like out of a movie.
Power shit. Yeah.
Seriously. And he shoots at the cop and he misses. So, I mean, I'm guessing this thing isn't super accurate, but he burns the cop's face and he's able to take off.
Oh,
but then the cop shoots him and he gets David twice, but like in the leg.
Okay.
Lewis is alive, but her skull is broken in 2 parts.
Oh, Angel. Okay.
Yeah. She recovers, but so does David.
Don't love the second half of that.
David is indicted for assault with a deadly weapon and assault on a police officer. He's sentenced to 14 years, but he only serves 9.
Oh my God. Okay.
His wife divorces him, as of course, while he was in prison. He remarried a few months after he got out of prison. So this guy's definitely like he's probably like a charmer, right? I mean, he's probably a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
Soon after, his wife takes a solo trip to Hawaii. So I'm sure there's probably already some issues.
Mm-hmm.
And while she's away, he goes for a drive and he sees a young woman driving a car. He drives her off the road. She jumps out of her car and starts running into the woods, which again, she took the woods instead of the man.
Yeah.
She waited in the woods for over an hour before he left. And this is in January too. So she really just doesn't want to be around him. And she was right, because this guy's a nut. So later that night, another woman, Cheryl, is driving when a vehicle hits her from behind. And she gets out of her car and yells at him. Then as she turns away, he grabs her and pulls a knife on her and tells her he wants to rape her and starts dragging her away. He strips her, he stabs her in the arm, and then after he stabbed her, he just sort of changed his demeanor and he drapes his coat over her and takes her back to the car. He offers to follow her home, help bandage her up, and she politely declines. She gets into the car and starts driving away. He's following her. She pulls into a well-lit hotel and then he doesn't go in there.
Yeah.
She goes to the police, gives him a description of him and his license plate number. And he knew that she would call the cops. So he goes home to pack and police go to his house while he's there, but he sneaks out through the back.
Ugh. Surround the back, cops. Come on.
Seriously. After that, he breaks into a woman's house. He ends up taking her in her car, raping her, and then letting her go. Then he tries to abduct another woman in her car. He threatens her with a shotgun, but she makes a run for it while he's changing license plates. I mean, this guy's just on a rampage.
Yeah.
And then after that woman, he lays low for a while until he kidnaps a woman named Barbara and her baby from their home. Yeah.
No.
And he doesn't kill either of them, but he does rape Barbara. And then he's like, he's bizarre with this. I mean, I don't know what's going on in his mind.
Nothing good.
No, but after this incident, he hitches to a bus stop and that's where he's found by police. So he's sentenced to 7 years.
What? Oh my God. My mind is blown every number you say on this.
When he got out, and at this point, by the way, he hasn't killed anybody yet.
Mm-hmm.
So after he gets out of prison, he moves from a halfway house to his parents' house. And sometime after, one of his neighbors report that a gun is missing from their home. Starting in August 1979, this is when the murders begin. So someone starts killing women who are hiking or jogging along Bay Area trails. Between August 1979 and October 1980, 44-year-old Ida Kane dies, 23-year-old Barbara Schwartz, 26-year-old Anne Evelyn Alderson, and 23-year-old Mary Frances Bennett were all found murdered on different hiking trails in the Bay Area. Ida Kane and Anne Evelyn Anderson had been shot. Barbara Schwartz and Mary Frances Bennett had been stabbed. And according to SF Gate, Bennett's murder had been particularly vicious as he had stabbed her 25 times.
Oh my God. That's some real rage.
Yeah, for sure. In the fall of 1980, even more trailside victims were discovered. 18-year-old Cynthia Moreland and her fiance, 19-year-old Richard Stowes. So there was a guy in there as well. 22-year-old Diane O'Connor, 23-year-old Shauna May were all found shot and killed at Sky Trail at Point Reyes.
These are all in the same area.
All in the same area.
Why did they not have people? Did they have people on the lookout?
They had people on the lookout, and they even had warning signs saying, do not hike alone. Women should be especially cautious. And police would warn hikers and to spread the word across the Bay Area. And Sheriff Al Halstein said in a news conference, the killer who has a severe psychological problem is motivated to put the victims through some degree of discomfort, which is an understatement, prior to the killings, and put them in submissive positions. The trails largely emptied out as scared hikers stayed at home, but the trailside killer continued to kill. And on March 29th, 1981, the serial killer attacked 20-year-old Ellen Hansen and her boyfriend, 20-year-old Steve Hartle. He told the couple that he had just intended to just rape Ellen, which is
that's
terrifying.
Okay. Yeah. What the fuck?
And he tried to take them off the trail, but they didn't comply. They both fought and they were both shot. He killed the woman, Hansen, but Hartle, her boyfriend, narrowly survived after being shot in the neck.
Oh, ow.
Yeah. And then finally in May 1981, he killed his last victim, 20-year-old Heather Skaggs. By the time David Carpenter killed his final victim, he left a trail of evidence in his like, just all over the place. So he started getting kind of sloppy. First of all, Hartle lived, and so he was able to give the police a lot of information to help identify. Good. Yeah. Heather Skaggs was an especially big fuck up for him because she was a coworker. And she had told her mother and her boyfriend that she was going to buy a car from a fellow coworker, and that coworker was David Carpenter. And he had told her, don't tell anybody, but she told everybody, which was really good because when she disappeared, immediately her boyfriend suspected David Carpenter. So tips started pouring in that led the police to Carpenter's door. And before long, they were able to apprehend him. He denied all of the murders, but DNA evidence linked him to the murders that was really solid. And there was a gun that linked him to the murders as well.
Sloppy.
Yeah. So today, if he's still alive today, this article was from like 2023. David Carpenter is the oldest prisoner on death row in California. And the state is currently in the process of dismantling the capital punishment. But he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Wow.
So that is option 2.
Great options. Thanks for that. I gotta say the women in these stories are like super fucking smart trying to get away. They are quick.
They're
thinkers.
really awesome.
Yeah. But quick I also have to say, stop running and hiking by yourself in general. Anywhere you go. Not to victim blame. It's not your fault, but like you gotta watch out. I do want
to point out that some of the women weren't hiking by themselves.
Right. The one with their boyfriend.
So not just the ones with their boyfriend, but Diane, for instance, she was with a group. They just separated temporarily because they were going at different paces.
Jeez.
But she was with a group. There was one other, Shauna May was also with a group. So I think there were like, it wasn't just women who were hiking or jogging alone.
That's even more terrifying.
Yeah. All right. So now our final option.
This is getting rusty.
This is, So this is the death of Rebecca Wight. Rebecca Wight, spelled W-I-G-H-T, was a student who was working on her master's degree in business administration. And her girlfriend was Claudia Brenner, who was a Massachusetts-born architectural student. And they had been partners for 2 years. They met while they were both grad students at Virginia Tech. So super smart chicks. Yeah. Claudia talks about her relationship with Rebecca. And she says that while it's easy to idealize a past relationship, she really does remember their relationship to be near perfect.
Oh.
Yeah.
This makes it way harder.
It really does. Like, it was so heartbreaking to just to hear her talk about this. After they graduated, they both got jobs in different cities, but they continued their relationship and they would take trips together. They decided to go on this trip because they both loved the outdoors. And during this trip, they intended to discuss their futures and their next move. They wanted to be closer together. So a lot of optimism and promise for the future for these two very bright young women who were very much in love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it so much worse.
It really does. So in May 1988, Wight and Brenner were on their trip together. They were hiking the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
They parked their car at Dead Woman Hollow and hiked into Michoud State Forest, where they set up camp. I know the name,
irony,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When they found a pretty secluded area and they thought they were all alone. They decided to camp out. But in the morning, when Wight went to walk over to a public restroom that was near their campground, she encountered a man. His name is Stephen Roy Carr. He lived in the woods. He sometimes lived in caves. He was actually escaping from a warrant in Florida. So he was just hanging out over there. And he asked Wight for a cigarette. She said she didn't have one. And he asked, in quotes, "Does the other one?" She said no. And she hurried back to the campsite. Yeah. Where she told her girlfriend that someone else was there and the couple dressed and they decided to find a more private campsite. So they kept walking. And then later that day, the couple encountered Carr again. And this is when they had stopped to look at their map and he came up behind them and asked them if they were lost.
Okay.
Yeah. They said no, and they continued on trying to get far from him. This time they were a bit more unsettled because he had his .22 caliber rifle on him and visible.
Cute.
So they kept walking, and for a while they kept looking over their shoulder. They took kind of a roundabout route. But once they had gone a good distance, they started to relax. So Brenner and Wight eventually set up camp in a new location. And like this location just sounds so romantic and charming. It was a little clearing in a wooden area near a little stream. So it just sounds really pretty. They ate dinner. And as the night went on, they started making out and they started moving towards having sex. Unseen by the couple, Carr was watching them from 82 feet away.
Oh, come on.
He then fired 8 bullets at the woman.
Why?
Claudia Brenner was hit 5 times in the arm, face, head, and neck. She at first didn't even realize that she was shot when the first shot was fired. She was more startled by the noise and she thought it was like some sort of a natural disaster or something.
Yeah.
But Rebecca noticed right away and started yelling, and Claudia kept getting hit. But then when they got up, Rebecca got hit, and she was hit twice. She was hit in the back. She was hit near the head and then also in the back. And the last shot actually entered her liver. So Claudia reports that she didn't know exactly what to do, but Rebecca had told her to try and just stop the bleeding. So Claudia ran back, grabbed some towels, and they used them to try to stop the bleeding. They decided that they were just going to try to walk and try to get help as far as they can.
These poor girls.
Yeah. But Rebecca Wight was unable to stand. And so she told Claudia to go on, and Claudia had to make the uncomfortable decision, or the uncomfortable is an understatement.
Yeah.
So she covered her partner. Claudia covered Rebecca with a sleeping bag. And after being shot 5 times, Claudia hiked 4 miles to the road.
I can't even hike 4 miles healthy.
Like, seriously. But like, you know what I mean? Like, that's tough.
That's adrenaline, man.
Pure adrenaline. Finally, she was able to get a ride with these 2 teenage boys, and they took her to the police station, and police returned to the scene, and they had found that Rebecca Wight had died from her wounds. And after Claudia came out of surgery, she was informed that her partner had passed.
Oh God, how hard would that be?
Which is so heartbreaking.
Poor thing.
Carr thought that both women were dead, and he had left 25 rounds of ammunition at the scene, along with a knit cap that he had worn. So like, idiot, right? Police found them at the scene, and for 10 days after the shooting, Carr hid out in a Mennonite community, because Mennonite communities, they're not supposed to watch the news or read the news or watch television. So they didn't know that Carr was, right? So like, they didn't know that Carr was a suspect at all. But there was one member who secretly watched television. So yay for those rule breakers, because he recognized Carr from the composite drawings, and he called the police. So the police arrested Carr on the warrant from California for grand larceny. Sorry, not from California, from Florida. Carr waived his right to a jury in exchange for a plea agreement, so that the prosecution wouldn't seek the death penalty. At the trial, and this is where the rage just fills up. At the trial, Carr claimed that he had been enraged of the sight of 2 women having sex, that the 2 women had taunted him by having sex in front of him. The public defender said that he had been raped in a Florida prison and sexually abused as a child, which like, okay, but that still doesn't give you the right to kill somebody. But like, if they had just said that, but then they also said like that the couple's lesbianism was the provocation that caused his client inexplicable rage. And it's like, screw you.
Well, first of all, like, if it makes you mad watching them have sex, you're in a whole ass woods. Like maybe just walk somewhere else. And
you didn't have to follow them miles.
Yeah. Also, even if they were provocating him and like trying to shove it in his face, also you're in a whole ass woods. Walk the other way. Yeah. Like what the actual fuck? Okay.
His lawyer also said that Carr had felt rejected from women or by women his whole life. And this caused him to be even more enraged. And it's like, that is not an excuse. Like,
yeah,
there's, you know what I mean? That's absolutely. It's like, but thankfully the judge refused to allow evidence of Carr's psychosexual history, ruling it irrelevant. Good. He also disallowed the introduction of Brenner and White's relationship in court. So the reason for that is because he didn't want, that to be, if somebody's homophobic or whatever. And then he forced the defense to cut a deal and accept sentence of life without parole. So that's what he got. And he tried to appeal, but it was denied by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Claudia devoted herself to, so she went on, she had a great career. She devoted herself to also, in addition to her career, fighting anti-gay bias and became an advocate for anti-hate legislation.
Good.
Or is it hate legislation? Just to like help so that, yeah. So like
promoting
LGBTQ
hate.
crimes against, yes, exactly.
I followed.
So these are your three horrible options. This is absolutely an all kill episode for sure.
Oh yeah. But if there was an option worse than kill, that would be my choice for all three of these.
Seriously. We have the abduction of Kari Swenson by the so-called mountain men. For option 2, we have the trailside killer. Mm-hmm. And then for option 3, we have the sad and tragic murder of Rebecca Wight.
So I already know who my kill is going to be. It's the trailside guy because he seemed smart in a sick way. Like he got away with a lot and he kept continuing to change his ways and like could escape for a long time. And he was raping and killing multiple people. So he's like the most shittiest piece of shit out of these three, in my opinion. They're all like fucked up. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not. This is the nature of the game. It's bad choices we have to make. I think this is a weird one because the mountain men seemed like idiots, like complete idiots. They killed her, or they killed people by accident and shot people by accident because they were such fucking dumbasses. So you wonder if like you could sort of outsmart them if you did encounter them in the woods, but it's also 2 people. It's not just one person after you, it's 2 that you have to escape. But the other guy, he's just completely unhinged and just shoots you willy-nilly. You're like, what the fuck did you do that for? Because I'm wearing the color red today? Like, what? So that's a tough marry and fuck situation. I think I would marry the mountain men only because I think I could outsmart them because they seem like complete, airheads. And I think they're out to have this weird like person that they kept there long term. And so there was more possibility to escape death. Not saying you could escape other things that might happen to you, but it seems like they were stupid enough that you could possibly get out of there. So I would marry them and then I would fuck what's his name? Carr. Hate him. He just kills you willy-nilly for no reason. What about you?
So I agree with you on who I'm going to kill, which is the serial killer and also it's like the amount of pain and destruction that he's done to like just so many people. And he's so unpredictable as a serial killer too. Mm-hmm. Like he's just, you don't know what you're going to get with him. And he seemed to like, we don't know exactly how, but he seemed to have some sort of psychological like torture too before he killed them. So definitely killing him. Mm-hmm. So it's so interesting with the last two, because I think I'm going to differ from you, even though I hear you. And I think you're right, because they're such idiots that like at some point I think I could get away, but they're also just the idea of if they actually got me to one of those caves, I feel like that would be even worse than death, right? I mean, it's just like the worst possible situation.
Yeah.
So, but if we're just looking at what happened, then it's like, okay, yeah, obviously, like, you know, she got to live and stuff. But if I was to just meet them in the woods, so I think I have to, I guess, fuck with them and then marry Carr, because he's not going to torture me. He's not going to do like weird stuff. He's just going to like, it's going to be a shot. And then maybe he'll be stupid enough to just run off after, and I can maybe get away, or I'll just, you know, kick it. But yeah,
that was a tough one.
Yeah.
Good job.
That was a really tough one. So
now I have to go watch Care Bears and...
Yeah, seriously. Next time you hear a lady saying that, yes, she would pick the bear, this is why. Because you might get a really nice dude out there, but if you don't, it really, really sucks. So, yeah.
So this is a Marry the Bear episode.
This is a Marry the Bear for sure episode.
Thanks for putting me through all of that. Good job.
Anytime.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please send us your suggestions of fuck, marry, kill options. We really enjoy hearing from you.
And also, if you guys are listening to the show and you like it, please leave us a 5-star review on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you like, just so other people can find us too.
Yeah, it helps us keep going. Signing off.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.